Imagine the ripple effects on wealth and education if every freed person got $10,000 after the Civil War. I stumbled across this article when I was preparing this video. The article, it's a little summary because they did a podcast, so they wrote a little summary to attach to the podcast, and I'm going to put the link to the podcast in this video's description. But check this out. It's from Harvard Kennedy School. The title is U.S. Pays Reparation Every Day, or Reparations Every Day, just not to Black Americans. And this goes to every single person that always has some kind of issue when we talk about reparations. But I bet you it's a group right now getting reparations for something in this country. Listen to this. HKS faculty members Cornell William Brooks and Linda Belmis explore why the extensive U.S. system of restorative justice is so disconnected from the multifaceted intergenerational harms suffered by Black Americans. Farmers, fishermen, people who've lost bank accounts or pensions, people who have had a bad reaction to, or let's say, COVID vaccine, people who've had a reaction to any other vaccine, indigenous people, veterans, descendants of veterans, people who get hurt on the job, people who built nuclear bombs, people exposed to pesticides, coal miners who get black lung disease, people who lose paychecks or homes from floods, droughts, or other natural disasters, people who are impacted by trade agreements. That's a long list, but it's still a fraction of the many people and groups who receive compensation either from or through the government for harms they have suffered. Every day, someone somewhere in America is being compensated under the concept of what is known as restorative justice, a type of justice that, instead of meting out punishment to a wrongdoer, seeks to make the victims or their families whole, or at least repair them as much as possible. Restorative justice is also known as reparative justice, or in the context of the experience of Black Americans from the first slave ship in the 1600s through to today, simply reparations. But unlike those other everyday reparations, Black reparations are seen by many as highly charged political third rail. So last year, Harvard Kennedy School faculty members Cornell William Brooks and Linda Belmans launched a research project to see if they could change the conversation. What they found is a solution that is, to put it mildly, perverse. Cataloging the harms suffered by Black Americans through the centuries, from slavery itself through segregation, disenfranchisement, economic and educational discrimination, wealth inequalities, and more, they found that no group was perhaps more deserving of being made whole. They also studied and cataloged a huge system of American restorative compensation that works every day to make people whole for harms they have suffered. What they didn't find, however, was a connection between the two. I'll be back.
And you don't even have any Black aldermen there. Now, it's not your fault. It's a testimony of just how sorry and pathetic the black aldermen are in City Hall, which has allowed you all to do all type of things that you all shouldn't be allowed to do.
Now that part you just heard, I accidentally left out of the short. Man, I was shaking my head when I realized that. But she took the words out of my mouth. That's what I call black American politicians. Useless. You are useless. There's nowhere in the world why you are a local or a national politician and you're allowing immigrants and racist politicians to do the things they're doing. You are a Judas. You have been sold out, bought and sold like the prostitutes you are. And I will tell you in your face. Hey everyone, welcome back. Those who have returned and newcomers, welcome. Let's jump into this. Like what I said initially, imagine the ripple effects on wealth and education if every free person got, I'll say minimum 10,000. They said 10,000. I said, it was more than, it should have been more than that. If they did right by our people after the Civil War, especially men who fought in the Civil War, 10,000 was not even a drop in the bucket. But to those who are like, well, if they gave them that kind of money, would they have known how to manage it? You guys who are having those thoughts, you think so little of our people. Let me give you a brief example, our education on how they were more than capable of managing the money if it was given to them after the Civil War. Did you know that newly freed people knew about finances? Let me tell you how. Formerly enslaved people in the United States learned about finances through a combination of inherent economic knowledge cultivated during slavery, formal education efforts by organizations like the Freedmen's Bureau, and practical, often harsh experience in the post-Civil War free labor economy. So they weren't slow like some of you guys want to think. So some of them learned. They learned. They had the opportunity to learn. And everybody was not a slave. So the ones who were free, they often taught them. They often taught people who became free. So let's go on. While legally considered property, many enslaved people developed economic knowledge through the business of slavery itself. Trades and skills, many were skilled craftsmen, carpenters, blacksmiths who learned valuable trades which they later used to earn a living. In formal economy, some enslaved people could earn cash on the side by performing overwork or selling surplus goods, providing limited experience with money management. Understanding commerce, enslaved individuals were often forced to interact with the system of bankers and accountants as part of the massive cotton industry, gaining a basic, albeit indirect, understanding of the broader commercial system. After the Civil War, formal efforts emerged to help freed people integrate into the cash-based economy that they did more than help to create. Let's go on. Freedmen's Bureau. The Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands played a crucial role in providing educational resources, including basic literacy and arithmetic, which were essential for managing finances, negotiating fair wages, and avoiding fraudulent contracts. Freedmen's Savings Bank, established in 1865, this institution was specifically chartered to teach freed slaves about money, work ethic, and saving. The bank had a social mission to encourage thrift and economic independence. Over 70,000 free people opened accounts, depositing millions in total, demonstrating their strong desire to participate in the free economy. The banks eventually collapsed due to mismanagement, and corruption caused a significant setback and instilled lasting distrust in formal financial institutions. Self-help and community efforts. Black American communities established their own schools, churches, and self-help organizations. Education was highly valued as a pathway to opportunity, and schools often included practical skills like business administration and bookkeeping. Black-owned banks. Despite the failure of the Freedmen's Bank, Black Americans established their own successful banking institutions in the late 1880s, such as the Savings Bank of the Grand Fountain United Order of True Reformers in Richmond, Virginia. The primary and often most difficult teacher was the harsh reality of the Reconstruction era economy. Free people had to learn quickly to navigate a system rife with exploitation. Wage negotiation. They transitioned from forced labor to negotiating wage and labor contracts, often encountering employers who used intimidation and fraudulent practices to keep wages low. Sharecropping and debt. Many entered into sharecropping, a system that required borrowing on credit from landowners for essentials like seeds and tools. This trapped many in a cycle of debt, which provided a painful lesson in credit and systemic economic subjugation. Land ownership. The pursuit of land ownership was a significant goal and a powerful driver of financial literacy, as it represented true freedom and self-sufficiency. Now you see why so much of our land was stolen, because land ownership represents freedom. Some people are just obsessed with keeping people bound, right? Let's go on. Now let's go in. I gave you a little bit of education and knowledge on how our people were very versed in managing their own monies, and they're still versed today. You know, I can't stand when people make our people seem so mentally inferior by, you know, making it seem like Black Americans as a whole don't have bank accounts. Many of them don't. They don't tell you the backstory behind why they don't have bank accounts, but many don't have bank accounts because they don't trust the bank. I just told you. You just got an example of the Freedmen's Bureau. I did not know that Black Americans amassed over $50-something million right after slavery, and it was stolen from them. Of course, you're not going to trust the bank. Some people still don't. Truth be told, I don't really trust them either. Okay, now let's go into compensation after slavery. If every ex-slave had received a payment of $10,000, roughly equivalent to $330,000 in today's dollars, immediately following the Emancipation Proclamation, it would have fundamentally reshaped Black America, the United States economy, and global historical dynamics. So actually, by them cheating us, all they did was cut off their nose to spite their face. Imagine how much more money this country would have if they did us fairly. But some of these people don't know anything about fair. They don't know anything about it. Let's go on. Economic empowerment and wealth creation. The payment would have provided immediate capital for the roughly 4 million newly freed people, enabling them to secure essentials like food, clothing, and shelter, which were major challenges in the immediate aftermath of the war. More importantly, it would have provided a foundation for generational wealth, which the lack of reparations largely prevented in reality. You guys should check out those videos I did a couple of years ago, talking about how our people were left to literally die after emancipation. Let's go on. Land and business ownership. Freed individuals could have purchased land, a primary source of wealth at the time, without falling into exploitative systems like sharecropping. This independent land ownership would have provided economic stability and means to build self-sufficient communities. The capital could have also been used to establish businesses, contributing to the development of a robust black-owned economic infrastructure. Education and social mobility. The funds could have been invested in education for children and adults, a right largely denied during slavery. Increased education and financial stability would have dramatically increased social mobility and allowed for greater participation in the political and civic life of the nation, potentially mitigating some of the worst aspects of the Jim Crow era. They always left us defenseless. When you don't have the money, you can't really fight against these racist and biased laws and regulations that they institute. You know? We were always set up to be under, so we couldn't fight. But we always, God made it where we always found a way. And you guys better stop denying. You better stop. Because I'm telling you, if it wasn't God's hand on us, we would be extinct. For real. Because that's how they wanted it to be. They rather have us extinct than for them to suffer the repercussions of their actions. Let's go on. Greater autonomy. With financial independence, ex-slaves would have had greater autonomy to make choices about where to live and work, reducing their vulnerability to coercion by former masters and white supremacist groups. We would have been able to build our own communities and not have to run to our communities, to these racist white communities, because their communities were supposedly better and more peaceful and taken care of, because they made sure these white communities had the resources and the manpower and the police security, right? While they left our communities empty, in shambles. So let's go on. Economic stimulus and transformation. The injection of approximately $40 billion in 1860s dollars into the economy would have provided a massive economic stimulus. As Black Americans split their income, it would have spurred demand for goods and services across the country. The Southern economy in particular would have transformed more rapidly, shifting from a system reliant on unpaid labor to a modernized wage-based system with a significant new class of consumers and property owners. They said, hell no, we gonna keep these niggeresses under defeat. Reduce racial wealth gap. The historical lack of compensation after slavery is a primary driver of today's immense racial wealth gap. A substantial initial payment would have drastically reduced or even eliminated this gap at its inception, leading to a much equitable society today. Political and social change. Economic power translates to political power. A financially secure black populace would have been a more formidable force in demanding civil rights, potentially altering the dynamics of the Reconstruction and post-Reconstruction America. The United States might have avoided the century of formalized racial oppression that followed the Civil War. When you don't have money, you can't really fight. There's a scripture in the Bible says that money is a defense. That's why they always had an upper hand over us, because they had money. They used money wickedly to oppress. Let's go on. Global economic influence. A more equitable U.S. would have been a stronger, more stable economic power on the world stage earlier in its history. Precedent for reparations. Successful implementation of a large-scale reparations program in the U.S. would have set a powerful global precedent for addressing historical injustices, potentially influencing how other nations approach the legacies of slavery and colonialism. Cultural contributions. With economic stability and freedom from pervasive systemic oppression, Black Americans' cultural contributions to the world in music, arts, science, and politics would have likely been even more profound and recognized on a global scale without the same degree of struggle and exploitation that marked their historical development. Meaning, if our people did not have an issue with wealth, you would have less of our men and women going into this dirty, dark, evil rap industry. They wouldn't have been desperate to sign these horrific contracts, forcing them in a sense to produce music that is verbally cursing their communities. You wouldn't have to do it. If our people swam in wealth like some of these groups, mainly white America, it wouldn't be a need to become a rapper like that. Because a lot of these people that went into rap, why did they do it? Yeah, you could say, well, they went into rap because they no. A lot of them went into the music industry because they were tired of being poor. And then when they didn't do rap, what they do? They hustled in the streets. It was all a setup. All a setup. Now, I'm about to end this video. It wasn't that long. It's just a brief description of, how fair. I don't even like saying fair. I don't even like talking about equality, because I feel like having a 400, 500 year head start, how dare you say anything to me about equality? There was nothing about your life that was equal. You didn't have to think about equality, because this country was set up for you, whether you went out there to make a life for yourself or you didn't. You didn't even have to wake up to desire. You didn't even have to have a desire to have a productive life or a successful life. It was just there for you. So, talking to me, if you ever came to me and asked me anything about equality, I would tell you to take that and throw it into the deepest part of the ocean, because you guys have 500 years of not having anyone challenge your way of life. Why do I need to be equal to you? Why? You have established such financial wealth that the wealth gap between us should be considered a crime. So there's no such thing as equality. What I personally want you to experience is what I experience. What the majority of Black Americans experience in this country for generations. That's what I want you to feel. I want that from the bottom of my heart, because it's only fair. You had hundreds of years to just swim and live in wealth. You didn't have to think about it, because it was at your fingertips. Even they say white poor Americans, you still had it better than Black Americans. So now I want you guys to feel how it feels to be the poorest people on the face of the earth, and not only being poor, ostracized, stigmatized, and harassed. I want you to feel how that feels. So when I decided to do this video sometime last year, it was some kind of New York Reparation Commission bill that came out, and I can attach it to this description as well. It was some things that I think Phil talked about on his channel, and some other people talked about how they didn't like the wording. And you got to pay attention to these snakes and these bills that they supposedly form for us, or maybe even pass. Pay attention to the wording and get on their ass. And we're not going to let this go. We're not going to let this go. We're going to let these immigrant people who come in our country and go into politics, we're going to let them know it's not your world. It's not your world. If you want to change things, how about go to your country and you can get into all the politics you want to get into. But this right here, these people are either going to do right by us, or they're going to be pushed out of their positions. I don't know if they think it's possible. I don't know if they think this went on so long that they think it's not possible. But a lot of these politicians, no matter what level they're on, national politicians, local politicians, they are about to lose everything they have if they keep playing with us. I might put a clip of this woman talking, or if I don't put it in this video, I'm gonna do a short on her going in to check these I think she's in Chicago. She's going in to check these aldermen. And yeah, because they playing games. I don't know why these people think. Okay, I'm about to end this video, folks. Thank you for your time and attention. Like I said, I'm gonna either put her video in this video, or I'm going to create a short as well. A short. All right, let me get up out of here. Thank you for your time and attention. Thank you for liking, subscribing, commenting, and sharing. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.